So this past weekend, he was going to Cowboy games and he was going to the Jake Paul Tyson fight. And Michael Irvin also went to the Colorado game. And there's been a lot of talk, and I think it's obvious if you're paying attention that McCarthy's out and they're looking for a rock star as a head coach. Well, there's this guy named Deion Sanders, the former Dallas Cowboy, who has bet on himself his entire life. Jackson State, Colorado. As a player, he was bouncing around Falcons to Cowboys to Niners, and a very confident guy. So there's this feeling that Deion, although Deion said, I'm not interested, would be in line to get the Cowboys job. And Michael Irvin was asked about that possibility.
If Jerry and the Cowboys up there around one and going to get Shedeur, if you want somebody to follow footsteps, you got Shedeur, you get Deion. I believe 100%, and I can tell you, good sources have told me that.
Okay, that made news. Now, Deion Sanders said, and I'll quote him, hey, I'm happy. I've got my kickstand down. You know what a kickstand is? I'm resting. It should be duly noted that kickstands are always temporary. They're not down forever. Somebody gets on that bike. And I am convinced if Dallas gets the number one pick, and I think they have a chance to, I think they're going to draft Shedeur Sanders and hire Deion Sanders as coach. The funniest response to this is, well, Dak has a no-trade clause. Yeah, so did Russell Wilson. You don't think Dak would waive that in 2 seconds if they drafted Shedeur Sanders? By the way, Aaron Rodgers, March 2022. Packers signed him to the biggest annual payment deal in the league at quarterback. By April of 2023, he was a Jet. Jimmy Garoppolo in 2019. Remember him? For about a minute, he was the highest paid quarterback. 2 years later, they drafted Trey Lance. Again, Russell Wilson had a no-trade clause. Nobody cares. Be good now. Jared Goff got a new deal. Couple years later, sent him to Detroit. Went and got Matt Stafford. Everything's negotiable. Everything in life is negotiable, but especially at quarterback. I mean, Dak Prescott, they've been stringing him along for years before his last contract. Dak Prescott is a grown-up. My favorite part of Dak, he's reasonable, he's a grown-up, he understands the world and the way the game is played. Here was Dak this summer.
I enjoy being a Cowboy 1,000%. Enjoy living in Dallas, enjoy everything about it, but this is a business.
You think Dak's going to get special treatment? Russell Wilson didn't. Aaron Rodgers didn't. And they have trophies. That's the way the world works. There's other stories out today. The Jets are not going to remain in the Aaron Rodgers business. So I'll say it again. If Dallas loses the next 2 weeks, and they're a 10-point dog to the Commanders this week, they will lose. And if they lose to the New York Giants at home, and doesn't matter where it's at, Dallas gets hammered at home weekly. I think they're a front runner for the number one pick because the Jacksonvilles and the Tennessees have to play twice still. So those guys are going to win games. I think New England's going to win games. Cleveland's going to win games. I'm not sure Dallas does win another game if they lose on Thanksgiving next Thursday to the New York Giants. And to me, it's the only way to escape the current mess. Hire a rock star head coach and draft a rock star quarterback on a rookie deal. Because Dallas will probably have to pay a big chunk of Dak's contract. The Broncos did with Russell Wilson. And Russell can still play, and Dak can still play. But he'll be off his second surgery. Dak lost his mobility off the first surgery, and he is not good enough to elevate this roster. They need a rock star coach and a rock star quarterback. And as Michael Irvin said yesterday, he has it sourced. They could get Deion Sanders. I don't know why anybody would, the no trade clause. People waive stuff in their contracts all the time. Dak's not going to sit behind and be embarrassed on the bench, cameras on him every 30 seconds, Dak Prescott backing up the Dallas Cowboys. And there'll be a market for Dak. People may not want to pay for his contract, but by the way, there'll be no market for Russell Wilson. He's doing pretty well. There's always a market in a sport where a third of the teams are dreadful at quarterback. If somebody else is paying the money and Dallas will have to pay a lot of the money, somebody will take Dak. They're not going to take Dak in his contract, but they'll take Dak. Monday morning quarterback joining us now live. So let's start with that. You know, when do they have to pay him? And is your feeling he has earned a contract? Because these are big decisions for an older team now where that salary cap, they're going to have to move off guys like potentially Kittle, who's still a very good player.
Yeah, and they've certainly mortgaged contracts. We see teams do this when they're in the window to win, where, you know, over the next couple of years, there's probably going to have to be a reset year where they just take their medicine and there's going to be a hole in the roster because they are moving off some of those guys. So, you know, certainly like with your Kittles, with your Deebo Samuels, with your Trent Williams, age, mileage comes into play. And yeah, I mean, like then the question becomes, okay, like can we move into this next phase with Brock Purdy able to be the guy who can fix things, who can fill holes? And you know, we saw it happen with Patrick Mahomes a couple of years ago. They sort of moved into the Mahomes 2.0 era when they traded Tyreek Hill away, and they've won 2 Super Bowls in the 2 years since. Josh Allen, same thing. We've gone through those names: Colin, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Tre'Davious White, Stephon Diggs, Mitch Morse. All those guys are gone in one offseason. And Josh Allen now has the Bills at 8-2 and having beaten the Chiefs at home. So, you know, like your big question is going to be going forward, whether or not Brock Purdy can be that guy for you. Now, the Niners, you know, have been preparing to pay him. They still have another year left on his contract after this one, so they could go into the contract year. But we saw how complicated that got in the past with guys like Kirk Cousins and Dak. So, you know, the plan all along has been to pay him during the 2025 offseason. I don't have any indication they've moved off of it, but certainly the implication of that, again, sort of relates to the question of whether or not Brock Purdy can be the guy that Josh Allen has been for the Bills this year and getting them to, I think I had the record that wrong there. I think it's 9-2, not 8-2. Whether or not, you know, he can be to the Niners what Patrick Mahomes has been to the Chiefs the last 3 years since trading Tyreek Hill.
Okay, we said owners are getting more impulsive. I wouldn't have fired Robert Saleh. They did. Firing a general manager before Thanksgiving, Joe Douglas, who, yes, he missed during the COVID era on a quarterback. That quarterback class ended up being a bunch of whiffs. So I don't think that's a fireable offense. I know Mekhi Becton didn't work out, but he's got a lot of hits. But why? What led to Joe Douglas getting fired this early?
What was the line from Belichick? Was it ready, fire, aim? Right?
Yeah.
Was that it? It just feels like that's where the organization is and has been. And I can give you a million examples of the decision-making being scattershot and all over the place and one thing not lining up with the other. And that's how this entire year's gone. And it's the way the Jets have operated for a long time, if we're being honest about it. There's an ownership problem there. And how the owner runs the team is an issue. The people who've worked there over the years have always felt like he's got this crew of non-football people around him that are way too involved in football decision-making. He's too sensitive to what's said on social media. And every new general manager and every new coach that goes in there believes, I'm going to be the one that fixes it. I'm going to be the one that changes the culture. And we've even heard Aaron Rodgers himself complain about this, you know, about the climate in that building. And it came to get 2 more guys this season. And if you want to talk about the timing of it, Colin, well, think about this, okay? So Davante Adams was clearly available earlier in the season, and yet the Jets hadn't made a hard offer until after they fired Robert Saleh, right? So you're 2-3 at that point. You fire Robert Saleh. You're playing for first place in the division. After you fire Saleh, that's when you make the move to go and get Davante Adams, right? Like, so how does any of that match up? You weren't in on him at all before, or you had at least not been involved enough to make an offer before. And now all of a sudden you're willing to give up a 3rd-round pick that can become a 2nd-round pick to get him after firing a coach. Is that a football move?
Yeah.
Or is that about changing some sort of narrative that's out there, or just making people in the building feel better? Like, it's scattershot. It's all over the place. And I think that's where this is. I think Joe Douglas for some time has been resigned to his fate. People who have been around him